Here's what we're going to do here on this last panel is that we were asking each of the cluster co-chairs to, or one from each cluster, just to make a brief summary remark about the work at their cluster meeting today, some follow-up work, or other comment. Chris is not here, I'm safe. Other comment, just kidding, about the cluster working group process, or so that kind of looking forward. We've had an intense 2 days, so I want to invite, starting with John Sund. Could you please, John Sund from the Ocean Products Cluster.
I feel like the last panel was all about ocean products, so I don't have to say too much. But I just wanted to kind of get a wrap on, why are we here? And what drives me to show up at these meetings is just a sustaining desire to figure out how to create sustainable economic activity in the Tongass in Southeast Alaska. And why do people live here, and why do we want to even do this? So in our group, what the overriding, underwriting values that keep coming up, right? What do we have to offer? Well, we have this pristine environment. In the ocean world, that's very critical. We sell that all over Alaska, or all over the world with our ASME advertising. But we have a real great recreational opportunities for people that live here, and we have great natural resources. When we get down to timber, mining, and fishing, obviously I kind of focus more on the fishing side. So my other underlying statement, and I feel like I've been preaching this for about 30 years now, and I had someone come up to me the other day and remind me about, I think it was John, said that I heard this before, but if you're going to be in business, especially in the resource business in Alaska, you are a partner with the government. The federal government controls 95% of the land in Southeast Alaska. The state controls 100% of the water, 100% of the fish and animals in the forest and in the water. So you are not in business without the state and the federal government being your partner. Now, they may not realize you're their partner, and that's one of the problems we have. And you have to continually get to that battle. I mean, every year you got to go back to the trough. And the private sector just gets tired of dealing with that. It's very frustrating, but it's part of the process. We're not going to change the underlying status of that. So with that as a given, I could go a whole speech on regulatory impacts and stuff too, but I am the regulatory compliance guy in my businesses for the last 30 years, so I'm pretty familiar with that. So on the ocean products side, we went through that, kind of had that big discussion, and I think we're really talking about 4 kind of fundamental drivers. What can we create that's new in Southeast Alaska? And you've just had a long discussion on mariculture is one of the new initiatives, opportunities we have, and we just talked about it quite a bit. And we're going to start taking a little different take on it. We're going to keep it on our agenda, but we're going to move a little bit from the model we've been working on for 20-some plus years, is small farms in remote areas of Southeast Alaska or Kachemak Bay or Prince William Sound. The model I don't think is working. They try hard and they work hard, but it's not producing sustainable, economic, viable businesses. And I think we're going to have to switch it a little bit and say we need to encourage larger entities to get to a sustainable activity where we might have deeper pockets and maybe have employees working on these farms rather than owner-operator on these farms. It's a little bit twist of where we've been going, but I think 25 years of what we've been doing has not produced the viability we want to see. In terms of build or maintain, the salmon industry, I just been involved with it all my life, and I just realized that next year it will be the 40th anniversary of the passage of the Nonprofit Hatchery Act. It passed in 1974. And that was the greatest collaboration of public and private partnership probably in the history of Alaska that has created this enhancement activity for our salmon. Who would have believed in the 70s that fishermen could run nonprofit hatcheries and make it work? It was a huge debate. The state put a $100 million bond issue up in 1976 before we had oil money. And it's produced tremendous, millions and millions of dollars of economic activity every year, year in and year out. And I'm proposing, kind of rolled it out today, that maybe it's time to take a look out to the next 40 years. We've had 40, maybe it's time to pull all the stakeholders together, the government, the feds, the state, the fishermen, the biologists, the economists, and let's just take a look at what we got, and can we get alignment of what all our speakers have been telling us? Can we get alignment in our government policies and our private sector needs and desires on our salmon? Whether it's coming off natural enhancement off of our forests, or it's coming out of enhancement in our hatcheries, or maybe there's some other stuff we want. Maybe the end result of the discussion is we like what we got, we're complacent, life is good, we just want to keep it rolling. But, you know, as somebody made a comment today, even if your ship's sinking, you ought to have a plan. You know, I think it's time to have that discussion. And so we got a little energy behind it in the group, and we're gonna try to roll that out into some type of, maybe a symposium where we can have a 2 or 3 day discussion on that issue. Then we had in our other issue of transferring wealth or transferring economy from outside the state to inside the state. The marine industry repair business, I think, is ripe for the picking. We can steal it right out of Puget Sound and right away from Washington and take it up here. Because I'm going to give you a statistic, and I'm still in the seafood business a little bit, but to take a 70-foot tender, fish tender, from Seward, Alaska to Seattle, one way costs $35,000. And it costs $35,000 to bring it back. So from Southeast Alaska, it's more like in the $50,000 range each way. So there's this tremendous opportunity we have with small ships to capture that repair, maintenance, upgrade capacity of those vessels in our coastal communities. And people are getting on it. I mean, it's going in Ketchikan and Wrangell and Petersburg, but it's a huge opportunity. But these guys are looking out and say, I don't want to take my boat down there, but what do we have? Do you have an electrician? Do you have a hydraulics guy? Do you have a pipe fitter that can work on my boat? And that stuff is being worked on. We have quite a core industry going on that. So we're going to keep that on our list. And the fourth one on our list is the one you've just heard so much about. It's called Protect. It's our dive industry. And the sea otters are winning the battle. And I don't have a good answer to Jaron Bruce or anybody else on this, but in number-wise, we created this multi-million-dollar dive industry. It used to be an Olympic fishery. We managed it out so you had to go dive twice a week. You literally have to live here in Southeast Alaska in the villages to participate, and it produces millions of dollars of economic activity that just flows right into our economy. And we now have 22,000 sea otters. They're growing at 12% per year. You do the math. And they leave an ecosystem disaster zone behind them. And I'm not going to argue it on an economic value. I'm just going to say if you go where they've been, you will find nothing there. The bivalves are gone, the abalone are gone, the crab are gone. And U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is in charge of managing sea otters, and that's all they do. They manage sea otters. They do not manage bivalves. They don't care about the eco-destruction behind these animals, and it's a huge problem. Don't know what we're going to do about it, but I can tell you this: we will lose the dive industry in 10 years if we don't get on it. So that's kind of where we're headed. We're going to keep some energy behind it. Aaron on our staff down here is going to keep us rolling. We're back to teleconferencing and meetings, so we will notice everybody. And if you're in Juneau, come down to the JEDC. You can sit eyeball to eyeball, and otherwise you could listen to us on teleconference. But those are kind of the 4 big initiatives. The training workforce initiative, I think Julie questioned everybody last time. It's the U of A's got a great thing going, and participate in that. But we're going to keep building it and keep going. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And Bill, could you come on down? Renewable Energy. Oh, yeah, that's it. He got the message.
I'm very energetic, Brian. 33 people voted with their seats to join us, 3 co-chairs of the Renewable Energy Cluster Working Group. Because this is a very complex problem, the world's largest industry, many facets to renewables, we recognize that there are diverse interests in the group, and therefore we ran our meeting primarily as a roundtable. We wanted to hear from those diverse interests, allow them to hear from each other so they could make connections after the meeting to work together in the future, and to come up with some new action initiatives. We've had 5 action initiatives, 5 also in reserve that were voted by an earlier process a year ago into a second tier. We wanted to find some new interest, some new folks to help us on those action initiatives, some of which are lacking champions at this time, and to hear if there are any new ones out there. And we did hear that. We cataloged all their comments, and we're going to distribute them to the folks. Necessity is the mother of invention and innovation in this case. The necessity, as we said earlier today, is rapid global climate change, ocean acidification, the villages under real hardship because energy, not just electricity, but all energy is expensive there. And therefore, that compels us to move from fossil fuels to running the world on renewables, the world's largest industry. This presents an enormous business opportunity, which can only be satisfied by private enterprise. The best meaning of us here, unless we're in the private enterprise, are not equipped to bring the resources to solve the problem. Chris Rose from the Renewable Energy Alaska Project, if you don't know him and them, look him up, says Alaska has such high energy prices that we have an opportunity to do things here that wouldn't make economic sense in the lower 48. We can be a pioneering laboratory, a rollout for new technologies by which we can run the world on renewables, perhaps harvest some intellectual property, build some wealth, add some value, and build a cluster industry. Our task is to seed a renewable energy cluster industry. The other clusters already exist. Ours doesn't. So we need to seed a cluster industry. We need to do that to compose a business case, to attract private enterprise, to move here, to conduct business in a profitable way, to manage benefit and risk, which is what private enterprise must do to be profitable, which is what private enterprise must do. Therefore, we must describe the market opportunity to them. Market is supply, demand, and price. Fortunately, thanks to JEDC and some money, we have a research enterprise going on the demand side for the 27 plus communities in Southeast Alaska, and that's about to bear fruition. We need to aggregate the supply too. There's a lot of renewable energy in Southeast Alaska. We just really don't know how much there is. We need to describe that so we can present a compelling case to private enterprise to move here and to engage in building a cluster industry. In order to do that, let us all who would contemplate the renewable energy future for Southeast Alaska think systems. Now that's not only generation, but it includes transmission, storage, and integration and utilization. And that may require alternatives to electricity for moving this renewable source energy around. That particularly interests me because that's how I've spent the last 10 years of my career co-authoring research papers on alternatives to electricity for that. Second, study the Southeast Alaska Integrated Resource Plan. It's $1 million worth of work. It focuses primarily on electricity and space heat because we know that people are turning on their electric resistance baseboard and eroding our hydro surplus. There's a lot of energy in there. Third, watch your language. In order to discuss energy intelligently, we have to distinguish between power and energy, conservation and efficiency, alternative, renewable, and sustainable. If we don't, we just get very confused in thinking about and planning for energy. Mr. Quinton reminded us that on the perspiration side, 10% inspiration, 90% perspiration of innovation and invention, it's necessary to sell whatever we come up with. You gotta sell it. My father at age 97 is proud to say that he's a salesman and has been all his life. That's his career, a salesman. He says nothing happens until somebody sells something. So that's our challenge. When I was a kid, I noticed that he had a tie clasp that men used to wear with their ties. And it said, it was brass, and it said YCDB SOYA. I was just learning to read. Didn't make sense to me. I said, Daddy, what's YCDBSOYA mean? He says, you can't do business sitting on your ass. So that's our call to action, and that's why we have action initiatives, 5 of them, 5 in reserve, and more of them. You're welcome to join us. Join us, the 33 who came, and the rest of you, and we'll get some action. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Let's move to the mining service and supply cluster. Jason?
A couple things we came up with this morning. First, develop Juneau as a regional rebuild center through favorable sales tax treatment. We're going to continue with this one. We're going to work on getting some hard numbers to present to CBJ as far as the money that could be brought in to the borough through the rebuilds, also through employment of people, other companies that might open up business once they see the amount of the work that'll be in town, local. Create and promote vocational trades training opportunities. This is still going on. It's probably gaining steam faster than any of our other initiatives. We also came up with this morning that we need to look at other careers besides other careers in the mining field that aren't miners, to see if there's training programs that can be developed through the university that way. Mine procurement event. Well, I guess that one's got the most speed going. That's happening Friday at 2 p.m. right here. So we got one done so far. We're on the fast track. Career building and environmental science and engineering. The champion for this one wasn't with us today, but I understand that he's created a pool of questions that he's going to present to the cluster for everyone to review, and that'll determine how we're going to go forward with that. And then develop industrial land within the CBJ. We're still working on that one. It's going to be on hold for a little bit with that position not being filled by CBJ at the current time. We did learn today, though, that the land on the uphill side of, say, Douglas Island is CBJ owned, and the coastal land is Gold Belt owned. So we'll be contacting Gold Belt to begin discussions to find out their views or concerns with industrial land out there.
Thank you, Jason. That's absolutely our newest cluster, and our cluster that's just starting. David, please.
I stand before you after this day and a half somewhere between abject fear and unbridled enthusiasm. I think that's exactly where Brian wanted us to be. The research cluster has now been referred to as the snowball cluster because there's so much enthusiasm and energy behind it that it's going to roll and pick up things as it goes down the hill. That's the abject fear part. Managing that enthusiasm, trying to go through things. I was speaking with Dane Smith at the Cluster 101, and he said, "I've never really heard of a research cluster." Handed me his card later and said, "Let me know how that works out." So we have the opportunity to be innovators, maybe, and to kind of figure out the way forward with this research cluster. And I wanted just 4 guiding principles I took from the meeting. I had the pleasure to have a lunch meeting with Jim Kostama and Patrick Quinton. And Jim Kostama looked at me at the meeting and said, "Think big," in all sincerity, and we will. There was a vision earlier on for the research community in Juneau of an increase of $30 million. So that's one vision to think about. How does that occur? Dan White talked to us about gold plating pennies. So I've got a bag of sand from Sandy Beach, and we're hopefully going to have a research collaboration. But that's influential science. That's big science. Making breakthroughs that actually have a major impact. What are those? Where are those occurring in Southeast Alaska? Those are the things we'll try to figure out, harness. Bob Janes, I thought, in his talk came up with a great concept saying how tourism best management practices has been one of the most influential things that's occurred in the tourism industry. Why not a research best management practices? Do researchers talk to industry? Are we talking to each other? Are we avoiding redundancy? Are we sharing resources? So research best management practices, I think a good concept. And finally, back to Dane Smith, I think a really key thing that he said in our discussion, what are your metrics of success? Quantify your metrics of success. I certainly hope I can stand up here at the next meeting and report back on what kind of gains we've made, how we've addressed these 4 kind of visionary statements, and what progress we've made. So, thanks.
That's great. Great enthusiasm. And last but not least, from the Visitor Products Cluster, Kirby.
Thanks, Brian. We had a great Visitor Products Cluster breakout over here. In fact, it went so well and so long, and we had so much interaction we didn't get a chance to do the assignment, which was talk about 3 things that's ahead in your cluster. So since I'm the chair, I'm just going to say what we're going to do. But we'll vet that through the other group, obviously. First of all, we're going to look and focus on one of the things that's been brought up a couple of times today, and that's the extension or continuation of the 2004 Federal Lands Recreation Enhancement Act, because the key to that is that the funds that we pay, the fees that operators and outfitters pay, that money stays here and stays on the Tongass and allows the Forest Service to do the great things they do for us as residents and visitors that come to Alaska. So we're going to work hard on that. We're going to evaluate and try to reactivate the multi-community visitor package cluster initiative, and that hopefully will bring other parts of our region into the fold, like Wrangell and Haines and some of the other smaller communities that don't have cruise ship business, Petersburg, and hopefully get the ferry system involved in looking at how we can make packages more economical and things like that. And then also we're going to work with the Forest Service and Juneau Ranger District to hopefully help to get the Mendenhall Glacier Recreation Master Plan funded and completed here very soon, because that's one of the things is chicken and egg. They've got to get that done before they can again begin to evaluate commercial use, and once they evaluate commercial use and hopefully find that there's room to grow, that adds funding to their efforts too. So those are the things we're going to work on. This was a great day and a half, great opportunity to network and see folks and spend time. Thank you to all the participants that came, all the folks that participated in the clusters, that are in the clusters, and if you're not, you've got a great choice of groups to join if you have an interest. I sat in on a little bit of the research breakout, and it's fascinating and it's really interesting, and I didn't have my hands full with visitor products. I'd maybe go over and see Dave, but no, it's a great opportunity. I wanted to thank also JEDC and the Forest Service for pulling this together, JEDC for keeping us on track, and the Forest Service for continuing to fund this effort. I think it's really made a big difference in how we work with agencies and work together in Southeast Alaska to try to do what we're doing, and that's to try to benefit the region and find better ways to increase the economic viability of our region and the businesses in the region. So, and lastly, to Brian, thank you. Thanks for all your hard work and your staff. I think they deserve a great big round of applause. So come join a cluster. Don't be shy.
Thanks, Kirby. And you're going to be pleased. We're going to get out of here on time. We have just a couple more very brief items, and that's to continue some of the thank yous as well. This event, like all events, and I think this event was a great success. I mean, just the fact that we have a great turnout, got a lot of work done, learned a lot. It always there's lots of us involved. There's always one person that we kind of got to ask to bring it all together, and in this case, that was Marie Franklin. So have a little gift for you, Marie. See how thoughtful I am. and it was a lot of work, and it's been really fun staying on track and being put on track. The cluster co-chairs are, this is a platform in many ways for them, and I really appreciate their efforts. I want to thank the Forest Service. They've been a really strong partner. We at JEDC since 2008 have been talking about the importance of innovation and industry cluster working groups, and it was a model that we very much wanted to see happen here in Southeast Alaska. And I think many of you know the story, but somewhere along the line, the Forest Service asked for a white paper about their transition framework and economic development in the region, and we sent in our comments, and we don't know how well they were taken or not. But then there was a RFP that came out for an economic development strategy for Southeast Alaska, and we thought about that really hard, and we said, we decided not to submit an economic development strategy for Southeast Alaska, but we said what we think we need is a cluster approach to put focus on key industries in the region. And couldn't tell you how pleased we were that the Forest Service accepted that. And they did what they should do to any good consultant, and they turned around and returned our proposal to us and said, okay, we're going to fund you. Now do what you said you were going to do, which was great, and it also put a lot of pressure on us to try to make this work. And we're 2 years into it, and we really sincerely appreciate their support. They've been the perfect kind of partner, really let us move forward and be supportive all along the way. At the beginning of the summit, we outlined some specific objectives, goals, things that we wanted to achieve, and I kind of want to state these. I want you to think about, how well did we do? At the beginning, I said we would come together at this Innovation Summit and share best practice on the local and state level. We heard from Portland, we heard from the state of Washington. We challenged ourselves with new paradigms for conducting and supporting business. I think certainly shared value comes to mind, as well as some other presentations. Offer real examples of what innovation looks like in companies here in Alaska. Bring attention to the priorities of key industries in our region. Engage policymakers with industrial representatives and their issues. Sharpen the dialogue about economic development. And finally, to invite new people to engage in these efforts. So I feel like we did well on all those fronts. How do we do? Did we do it? Yeah. I feel good. So thank you all, and just want to make sure I'm not missing. I'm not missing anything. Thank you very much. Our session is closed. Have a good day.